CO laughed at the black janitor, until she solved what 20 experts couldn't in just 60 seconds. The elevator doors slid open to reveal what should have been the crown jewel of Voxtech Corporation, the 34th floor, where million-dollar deals were sealed with nothing more than a whispered command. Instead, CO Grayson Hale stepped into his worst nightmare. "Lights on!" He barked at the sleek black panel beside the entrance. "Nothing." "Lights on." His voice echoed off the glass walls, but the sophisticated AI system that usually responded faster than an eager intern remained stubbornly silent. The irony wasn't lost on him. Voxtech had built its entire reputation on voice-activated artificial intelligence. Their slogan, plastered on billboards from Manhattan to Silicon Valley, proudly declared, "Your voice, our future." Yet here, on the floor designed to impress the world's most influential investors and tech journalists, that future had apparently gone mute. Grayson's jaw tightened as he pulled out his phone, the harsh glare illuminating his sharp features in the dim emergency lighting. "Jenkins! Get your team up here! Now!" Within 30 minutes, the 34th floor resembled a high-tech emergency room. 20 of the company's top engineers swarmed the space like surgeons around a dying patient, their laptops and tablets casting an eerie blue glow across the polished marble floors. Cables snaked everywhere, diagnostic equipment beeped incessantly, and the air hummed with frustrated technical jargon. "Sir, we've run every diagnostic protocol in our system," reported Sarah Chin, Voxtech's lead software engineer, her usually pristine blazer now wrinkled from hours of crawling under desks. "The hardware is functioning perfectly. All sensors are operational. The microphone arrays are receiving input, but the AI simply isn't processing voice commands." Grayson loosened his Italian silk tie, a vein pulsing visibly at his temple. "Sarah, do you see that conference room?" He pointed through the glass walls to where tomorrow's board meeting was scheduled to take place. "In less than 12 hours, I'm presenting our Q4 results to investors who control $800 million in funding. They're expecting to see our flagship AI in action, not a high-tech museum display. We understand the urgency, sir. Do you?" Grayson's voice could have cut glass. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like 20 supposed experts are being outsmarted by a computer that can't even turn on a light bulb." Dr. Marcus Webb, the graying head of Voxtech's AI division, looked up from his tablet. "Mr. Hale, we've been at this for 6 hours straight. We've checked every line of code, updated all firmware, and even brought in specialists from our Seattle office. The system architecture is sound. It's almost as if something is physically blocking the AI's ability to hear." "Physically blocking?" Grayson's laugh was sharp and humorless. "What, did someone stuff cotton in its ears? This is a multi-million-dollar AI system, not a teenager with headphones." The engineers exchanged glances. They'd seen their CEO's temper before, but tonight felt different. The stakes were higher, the pressure more intense. Voxtech's stock price had already taken a hit when rumors of technical difficulties began circulating on social media. One disastrous board meeting could trigger a corporate catastrophe. "Maybe we should consider postponing tomorrow's presentation," suggested James Morrison, the company's chief technology officer, his voice barely above a whisper. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Postpone?" Grayson's words dripped with venom. "Morrison, do you have any idea what postponing would cost us? Our competitors are breathing down our necks. TechFlow launched their voice assistant last month, and now they're claiming their system is more reliable than ours. One postponement, one sign of weakness, and we lose everything we've built." He began pacing, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the marble with military precision. "I didn't claw my way to the top of this industry by postponing. I didn't turn a startup into a Fortune 100 company by running away when things got difficult. You find a solution, and you find it tonight." The engineers bent back to their work with renewed desperation. Keyboards clattered, diagnostic programs ran their endless loops, and whispered theories filled the air. Some suspected a cyber attack. Others blamed a corrupted update. A few even wondered if the building's new construction had somehow interfered with the system's acoustic sensors. As midnight approached, the 34th floor had become a battlefield of modern technology and old-fashioned human frustration. Empty coffee cups littered every surface, pizza boxes stacked like cardboard tombstones in the corner. The engineers looked exhausted, their initial confidence replaced by the hollow stare of professionals facing an impossible problem. "This doesn't make sense," muttered Chin, staring at her screen. "Every test shows the system should be working. The AI is receiving audio input, processing it correctly, but then, nothing. It's like there's a gap in the chain we can't see. Maybe the problem isn't in the code," offered Tom Rodriguez, a junior engineer who'd been unusually quiet all evening. "What if it's environmental? Some kind of acoustic interference?" Dr. Webb shook his head dismissively. "Tom, we've checked electromagnetic interference, radio frequencies, even ultrasonic noise from the building's HVAC system. The acoustic environment is clean." "But..." "No buts," Grayson snapped, overhearing the conversation. "I'm not paying you people to chase ghost theories. I need results, not speculation about invisible sound waves." The clock on the wall ticked toward 1 a.m., each second bringing them closer to the morning's make-or-break presentation. The engineers were running out of ideas, running out of time, and running out of hope. None of them noticed the quiet figure moving efficiently through the chaos, her dark uniform nearly invisible in the dim lighting. She pushed her cleaning cart between the clusters of equipment, emptying trash bins and wiping down surfaces with practiced precision. To the engineers, she was part of the building's infrastructure, present but invisible, essential but unnoticed. Her name was Olita James, and she'd been cleaning the Voxtech building for 3 years. Every night, she moved through the floors like a ghost, maintaining the pristine environment that Voxtech's executives demanded. She knew every corner, every surface, every sound that belonged in the building and every sound that didn't. Tonight, something was definitely wrong with the sounds on the 34th floor. As she worked, Olita listened to the engineers' increasingly frantic discussions. She heard their theories, their frustrations, their growing panic. She watched them crawl under desks, tear apart panels, and stare at screens until their eyes watered. What she didn't see was anyone actually listening to the room itself. The irony would have been amusing if the situation weren't so desperate. Here were 20 brilliant minds, armed with millions of dollars in diagnostic equipment, trying to solve a problem with a voice-activated system. Yet not one of them had stopped to truly listen to how their voices sounded in the space. But Olita had been listening all night. And what she heard, or more precisely, what she didn't hear, was about to change everything. By 2 a.m., the 34th floor had become a graveyard of failed solutions. Diagnostic cables lay scattered across the marble like technological tumbleweeds, and the engineers moved with the sluggish desperation of people who knew they were failing spectacularly. "Run the acoustic calibration one more time," Dr. Webb commanded, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting instructions. "Marcus, we've run it 12 times already," Sarah Chin replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "The results are identical every time. Perfect calibration, perfect response, except the AI won't respond to anything." Grayson paced behind them like a caged predator, his earlier fury now replaced by something more dangerous: cold calculation. He was already mentally preparing damage control statements, planning which heads would roll after this disaster. "What about the neural network pathways?" suggested Rodriguez, grasping at straws. "Maybe there's a bottleneck in the decision tree algorithms?" "Tom, we've mapped every pathway," Chin snapped. "The neural networks are functioning flawlessly. It's receiving input, processing it correctly, generating appropriate responses, but then nothing gets executed." As the engineers debated increasingly esoteric technical theories, Olita continued her methodical cleaning routine. She moved like a dancer around their equipment, her movements economical and purposeful. Years of night shift work had taught her to be efficient and invisible, completing her tasks while the building's daytime occupants remained blissfully unaware of her existence. But tonight was different. Tonight she couldn't ignore what her trained ear was telling her. She paused beside the main interface panel, a sleek black monolith that served as the AI's primary communication hub. The engineers had been gathered around it all night, speaking directly into its sensors, pleading with it to respond. Olita set down her spray bottle and listened. When Dr. Webb spoke to the panel, his words seemed to disappear into a void. There was no acoustic reflection, no subtle echo that should bounce back from the walls. In a properly designed space, voices should have a natural resonance, a warmth that came from sound waves interacting with the environment. Here, there was nothing. Just dead air. She cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me." The nearest engineer, a young man hunched over a laptop, didn't even look up. "Excuse me," she repeated slightly louder. This time, Tom Rodriguez glanced in her direction. "Ma'am, we're kind of in the middle of something critical here. Could you maybe clean this area later?" Olita nodded toward the interface panel. "Y'all ever check the echo bounce?" The typing stopped. Conversations paused. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some confused, others annoyed at the interruption. "The what now?" Rodriguez asked. "Echo bounce," Olita repeated patiently. "The way sound travels in a space. How it reflects off surfaces, comes back to where it started. Your voices, they ain't bouncing right in here." Dr. Webb looked up from his screen, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and irritation. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but we're dealing with extremely sophisticated AI systems here. The acoustic environment has been professionally optimized." "Has it?" Olita asked simply. The question hung in the air for a moment before Grayson's laughter shattered the silence. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full-blown laughter that echoed, ironically, perfectly off the glass walls. "Oh, this is rich," he gasped, wiping his eyes. 20 MIT graduates, 12 PhDs, and now we're getting troubleshooting advice from the cleaning lady." His laughter was infectious. Soon, several engineers were chuckling, the tension of the long night finding release in shared amusement at the absurdity of the situation. "What's next?" Grayson continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe the vending machine's out of tune. Should we consult the security guard about quantum computing?" More laughter rippled through the group. Even Chin managed a tired smile. "Ma'am," Dr. Webb said, his tone patronizing but not unkind. "Voice-activated AI systems are incredibly complex. They involve machine learning algorithms, natural language processing, neural network architectures that took years to develop. The idea that a simple acoustic issue could stump our entire team is, well, it's not really how these systems work." Olita absorbed their laughter without flinching. She'd heard it before, in different forms, in different places. The dismissive chuckles of people who couldn't imagine that someone like her might know something they didn't. "I understand," she said quietly, picking up her spray bottle again. "Y'all are the experts." "Exactly," Grayson said, his amusement finally subsiding. "We're the experts. We didn't build a billion-dollar company by listening to cleaning tips from the night shift." He turned back to his engineers, dismissing Alita with a wave of his hand. "All right, people, break time's over. We've got 4 hours until the board meeting. I want solutions, not comedy relief." The engineers returned to their screens, keyboards clicking with renewed urgency. The moment of levity had passed, replaced by the crushing weight of their unsolved problem. Olita simply nodded and shrugged, her expression unchanged. She'd said her piece. Whether they listened or not wasn't her responsibility. She moved to the next section of the floor, pushing her cart with the same steady rhythm she'd maintained all night. Behind her, the experts continued their desperate search for answers, completely unaware that the solution to their problem was literally over their heads. As she worked, Olita allowed herself a small, knowing smile. She'd learned long ago that sometimes the most important truths were the ones people couldn't hear, not because they were whispered too softly, but because they were spoken by voices that weren't supposed to matter. But sound didn't care about corporate hierarchies or impressive degrees. Sound followed the laws of physics, not the rules of boardrooms. And physics was about to have the last laugh. 3 hours had passed since the engineers' laughter echoed through the 34th floor. Now, at 5 a.m., Most of them had collapsed into chairs or retreated to the break room, their energy spent and their hope nearly exhausted. The emergency lighting cast long shadows across the silent floor, making the space feel more like a tomb than a triumph of modern technology. Grayson had finally stopped pacing. He sat slumped in his executive chair, staring at the interface panel that had become his nemesis. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled, his $1,000 shirt wrinkled beyond repair. In 3 hours he would face the board of directors with nothing but excuses and failure. "Sir?" Sarah Chin approached cautiously, holding a steaming cup of coffee like a peace offering. "Maybe we should consider calling in the original architects? The team that designed the acoustic specifications? At 5 in the morning?" Grayson's voice was flat, defeated. "Chen, in 3 hours I'm going to walk into that boardroom and explain to 12 of the most powerful investors in Silicon Valley why our flagship technology doesn't work. Do you think they'll care about architectural consultants?" Dr. Webb looked up from his laptop, where he'd been running the same diagnostic sequence for the 15th time. "The system keeps showing green across all parameters. It's like trying to diagnose a patient who appears perfectly healthy but won't wake up." "Maybe that's exactly what this is," Rodriguez muttered from his corner. "A coma. Something blocking the connection between input and output." Most of the engineers barely registered his comment. They'd heard dozens of theories throughout the night, each one leading nowhere. But Tom's words sparked something in the mind of the woman quietly cleaning the lobby area 50 feet away. Olita had been thinking about connections all night. Not the digital kind that obsessed the engineers, but the physical pathways that sound traveled through space. She'd learned long ago that sound was honest. It followed rules that couldn't be coded around or updated with new software. As the engineers dozed fitfully at their stations, Olita made her way to the far corner of the lobby, near the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the sleeping city. This was where she always tested the acoustics when she cleaned corporate offices. She stood perfectly still and clapped once. The sound should have bounced off the glass, reflected from the polished surfaces, and returned to her ears with a crisp, clear echo. In a well-designed space, that echo would arrive approximately 0.3 seconds later, carrying information about the room's dimensions and materials. Instead, the clap vanished into nothingness. No reflection. No return. Just silence. Olita frowned and moved to a different position, closer to the center of the lobby. She clapped again. Same result. The sound disappeared as if the room itself was swallowing it. Now she was truly puzzled. Even in the most acoustically treated spaces, recording studios, and anechoic chambers, there was always some reflection. Sound didn't just disappear unless something was actively absorbing it. She looked up. The ceiling was a masterpiece of modern design, clean lines, hidden lighting, and seamless acoustic tiles that created an illusion of floating space. But Olita's trained eye caught something the engineers had missed. One tile was slightly different from the others. Not obviously so, the difference was subtle, the kind of detail that only someone who spent their life noticing imperfections would catch. It was positioned directly above the cluster of microphones that served as the AI's primary audio input array. Olita retrieved the step ladder from her supply closet, the same one she used to clean the high windows and dust the light fixtures. The engineers were too absorbed in their digital world to notice her setting it up beneath the suspect tile. She climbed carefully, her movements sure and practiced. At the top, she gently pressed against the tile. It lifted easily, too easily. Standard acoustic tiles were mounted securely to prevent exactly this kind of displacement. What she found underneath made her breath catch. Instead of the thin acoustic foam that should have been there, someone had installed a thick, professional-grade sound dampener. The kind used in recording studios to create dead zones, areas where sound went to die. It was positioned perfectly to absorb any voice directed at the microphone array below. The AI wasn't malfunctioning. It was being systematically deafened. Olita carefully removed the dampener, a rectangular block of dense foam about the size of a laptop. Immediately, she could feel the difference in the air above her. The acoustic properties of the space shifted subtly, like a held breath being released. She examined the dampener in the dim light. This wasn't a manufacturing error or an architectural oversight. Someone had deliberately placed it here, knowing exactly what it would do to the voice recognition system below. But that was a mystery for later. Right now, she had a choice to make. She could replace the tile and finish her shift, letting the engineers continue their futile search until the morning brought inevitable disaster. Or she could move the dampener to where it belonged, in the designated acoustic treatment area 15 feet away, where it would improve the room's sound quality instead of destroying it. Olita looked down at the sleeping engineers, remembering their laughter, their dismissive superiority. Part of her wanted to let them fail, to let their arrogance cost them dearly. But that wasn't who she was. She repositioned the dampener in its proper location, where it would actually enhance the room's acoustic performance, then carefully replaced the tile. The entire operation took less than 60 seconds. As she descended the ladder, the room's AI system suddenly chimed to life. "Hello, welcome to the 34th floor. How may I assist you today?" The AI's cheerful greeting sliced through the exhausted silence like a fire alarm. Dr. Webb's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a cascade of ceramic and caffeine. Sarah Chen's laptop tumbled from her lap as she jolted awake. Across the room, Tom Rodriguez scrambled to his feet so quickly he knocked over his chair. Did it just? Chen stammered, staring at the interface panel that had been stubbornly silent for 8 hours. "Lights on," Dr. Webb commanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. The 34th floor erupted in brilliant illumination. Track lighting, accent lamps, and mood lighting all responded instantly, bathing the space in the warm, professional glow that had cost Voxteca's interior designers $500,000 to perfect. "Climate control, 72 degrees, Rodriguez called out. "Adjusting temperature to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. The AI responded smoothly. "Current temperature is 68 degrees. Estimated adjustment time, 4 minutes. Grayson launched himself from his chair like a man possessed. "Conference room lights. Open the presentation screens. Load the quarterly reports." Each command was executed flawlessly. The AI that had been dead to the world moments before now responded with the fluid intelligence that had made Voxtec famous. The presentation screens descended from hidden ceiling compartments, the conference room lights dimmed to optimal levels, and holographic displays materialized showing real-time stock prices and company metrics. "This is impossible," Dr. Webb muttered, frantically pulling up diagnostic logs on his laptop. "Nothing changed. I'm looking at the system logs right now. No updates, no restarts, no configuration changes. The last entry was 8 hours ago when we started troubleshooting." Chin was already running her own diagnostics, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Marcus is right. The system shows continuous uptime. According to these logs, the AI never stopped working. But we all heard it, 8 hours of silence. Check the hardware sensors." Grayson barked, his earlier despair replaced by manic energy. "Something must have changed. Systems don't just resurrect themselves." The engineers swarmed their equipment with renewed purpose, but their excitement was tinged with confusion. Every test they ran showed the same impossible result. The system had been functioning perfectly all night. "Sir?" Rodriguez called out, his voice uncertain. "The audio input logs show consistent signal reception throughout the night. The microphones were hearing us the entire time. Then why wasn't it responding?" Grayson demanded. I don't know. The signal chain shows no interruptions. Input received, processed, responses generated, but somehow those responses never made it to the output systems." Dr. Webb looked up from his screen, his face pale. "This doesn't make technical sense. It's like the AI was hearing us but couldn't speak back. Some kind of acoustic aphasia." As the engineers dove deeper into their impossible puzzle, none of them noticed Olita folding her step ladder and returning it to her supply closet. She moved with the same quiet efficiency she'd maintained all night, invisible to the men and women celebrating their mysterious victory. But Tom Rodriguez, still puzzled by the diagnostic anomalies, happened to glance in her direction as she pushed her cart toward the elevator bank. "Wait!" he called out, jogging to catch up with her. "Ma'am, excuse me." Olita paused, her hand on the elevator call button. "Yes? This might sound crazy, but did you do something? When you were cleaning near the ceiling tiles?" Behind them, the other engineers had gone quiet, drawn by Rodriguez's question. Grayson stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "What exactly are you suggesting, Tom?" the CEO asked carefully. Rodriguez looked between Olita and his colleagues, clearly uncertain. The timing seems like a big coincidence. The system comes back online right after she was working in that area." Olita met his gaze steadily. "I just moved something that was in the wrong place." "Moved what?" Dr. Webb asked, approaching with his laptop still open. "Acoustic dampener," Olita replied simply. "Was positioned right above your microphone array. Sound was getting absorbed instead of processed." The silence that followed was different from the frustrated quiet of the past 8 hours. This was the silence of minds recalibrating, of assumptions crumbling, of 20 experts realizing they'd been outsmarted by physics itself. "An acoustic dampener?" Chen repeated slowly. "But that would mean the AI was being systematically deafened." Dr. Webb finished, his voice barely above a whisper. "The microphones were receiving input, but the dampener was creating a dead zone that prevented proper voice recognition." Grayson's face cycled through a rainbow of emotions: confusion, realization, embarrassment, and finally, grudging respect. "You're telling me that our entire system failure was caused by a piece of foam in the wrong location?" "Dense foam," Olita corrected. "Professional grade. The kind used in recording studios. Wasn't there by accident." The implications of her words hit the room like a physical force. If the dampener hadn't been placed accidentally, that meant someone had deliberately sabotaged Voxteca's most important demonstration space. "How did you know?" Rodriguez asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier skepticism. Olita allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "Echo told me." She pressed the elevator call button. The doors opened immediately. The building's systems were working perfectly now that they could actually hear the commands. "Ma'am," Grayson called out as she stepped into the elevator. "What's your name?" "Olita James," she replied, pressing the button for the ground floor. "Miss James," Grayson said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of humility. "How did you?" But the elevator doors had already closed, carrying away the woman who had solved in 60 seconds what 20 experts couldn't figure out in 8 hours. The engineers stood in stunned silence, staring at the closed elevator doors, each of them grappling with the same uncomfortable realization: sometimes the most sophisticated problems had the simplest solutions, and sometimes the most important expertise came from the most unexpected sources. Above them, perfectly positioned acoustic dampener now did its job correctly, ensuring that every word spoken on the 34th floor would be heard clearly and completely. The Voxtec cafeteria buzzed with whispered conversations over morning coffee. Word traveled fast in a tech company, especially when it involved the impossible becoming possible overnight. By 7 a.m., everyone from interns to department heads had heard some version of the story: the 34th floor miracle, the night janitor, the mysterious solution that had saved the company's biggest presentation. Tom Rodriguez sat alone at a corner table, his laptop open to a search page he'd been staring at for 20 minutes. After Olita had disappeared into that elevator, something had nagged at him, a feeling that there was more to her story than anyone realized. "Olita James Acoustics." He typed into the search bar, not really expecting to find anything significant. What he found made his coffee grow cold. "Oh my God!" he whispered, scrolling through the results. "Sarah! Marcus! You need to see this." Dr. Webb and Sarah Chin approached his table, both looking like they'd slept in their clothes, which they had. "Tom, if this is about the dampener placement, we already ran the acoustic modeling," Chin said wearily. "You were right to be curious, but it's not about the dampener," Rodriguez interrupted, turning his laptop screen toward them. "It's about her. Look at this." The screen displayed an archived article from Architectural Acoustics Quarterly, dated 15 years earlier. The headline read, "Breakthrough in Concert Hall Design, James Acoustical Solutions Revolutionizes Sound Engineering." Beneath it was a professional photo of a younger Olita James, wearing a crisp business suit and standing in what appeared to be a magnificent concert hall. The caption identified her as Dr. Olita James, Principal Acoustical Engineer and founder of James Acoustical Solutions. Chen's eyes widened. "Doctor?" Rodriguez scrolled down, revealing more articles. MIT guest lecturer in 2018. Consultant for Carnegie Hall's renovation. Lead acoustical engineer for the Sydney Opera House restoration project. She has a PhD in architectural acoustics from Stanford. "This can't be the same person," Dr. Webb said, but his voice lacked conviction. More searching revealed a treasure trove of accomplishments. Olita James had been a pioneer in acoustic engineering, developing innovative sound design techniques that were still being used in concert halls and theaters worldwide. Her company, James Acoustical Solutions, had been one of the most respected firms in the industry. "Look at this." Chen pointed to another article. "She designed the acoustic systems for the Pentagon's classified briefing rooms. And here, she consulted on NASA's mission control centers to ensure perfect voice communication during space missions." Rodriguez found a technical paper she'd authored on microacoustic environments in high-security applications. The abstract discussed how minute acoustic irregularities could compromise sensitive audio systems, exactly the kind of expertise that would instantly recognize a misplaced sound dampener. "This is incredible," Dr. Webb muttered. "She's basically the Mozart of sound engineering. But then why is she?" His question trailed off as Rodriguez found the answer in a Business Journal article from 8 years earlier. The headline made them all fall silent. "Patent Theft Scandal Rocks Acoustic Engineering Firm." The article detailed how James Acoustical Solutions had collapsed after a bitter legal battle. Olita's revolutionary acoustic modeling techniques, innovations that had taken her years to develop, were allegedly stolen by a larger firm and patented under a male colleague's name. The legal fight had bankrupted her company and destroyed her reputation in the industry. "The court case dragged on for 3 years," Chen read aloud. "By the time she was vindicated, the patents had already been licensed to major corporations worldwide. She received no compensation for her innovations." Rodriguez found follow-up articles chronicling the aftermath. Olita had tried to rebuild, but the industry had moved on. Former clients, worried about association with the scandal, stopped returning her calls. Investors pulled funding. Within 2 years, one of the most brilliant acoustic engineers of her generation had effectively been blacklisted from her own field. "There's more," Dr. Webb said quietly, pointing to a small obituary he'd found. "Her daughter died in a car accident during the legal battle. Teenage daughter, her only child." The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. A woman at the peak of her professional success had lost everything: her life's work stolen, her reputation destroyed, her family shattered. The brilliant scientist who had once designed acoustic systems for the world's most prestigious venues had been forced to find work wherever she could. "She's been cleaning our building for 3 years," Chen said softly. 3 years, and none of us ever asked about her background." "Why would we?" Rodriguez replied, the shame evident in his voice. "She was just a cleaning lady. Invisible. Someone to nod at politely if we happened to see her in the halls." Dr. Webb closed the laptop with a quiet snap. "Every night she's been walking through our building, a building filled with acoustic technology, and we never once thought she might have something to contribute." The irony was crushing. Voxtech prided itself on innovation, on finding talent wherever it existed. Their hiring practices emphasized diversity and unconventional backgrounds. Yet they had employed one of the world's leading acoustic experts for 3 years without ever realizing who she was. "The echo bounce," Chen said suddenly. "When she mentioned echo bounce last night, we laughed at her. But that's exactly how acoustic engineers test room responses. She was doing a professional acoustic assessment while we were running computer diagnostics. And we dismissed her like she was suggesting we check if the computer was plugged in," Rodriguez added bitterly. Dr. Webb stood up slowly, his expression grim. "We need to find her. This morning's presentation is in 1 hour, and after what happened last night, I think we owe Dr. Olita James a conversation." But as they would soon discover, finding Olita James was going to be more complicated than they expected. Because while they had been uncovering her remarkable past, the rest of the world had been busy discovering it too. And not everyone who learned about the night janitor who saved Voxtech was going to keep that information quiet. Grayson Hale should have been celebrating. The board presentation had gone flawlessly, every voice command executed perfectly, every demonstration working like clockwork. The investors had been impressed, funding secured, and Voxtech's stock price was already climbing in pre-market trading. Instead, he sat in his office at 10 a.m., watching his world implode in real time. It had started with a single tweet from TechCrunch reporter Maya Singh, who had somehow gotten wind of the previous night's events. Breaking: Voxtech's miracle turnaround last night reportedly solved by Janitor after 20 engineers failed. Investigating claims of brilliant acoustics expert working night shift. #TechFail #Hidden Talent. Within an hour, the story had exploded across social media. But it wasn't just the basic facts spreading, someone had leaked security footage from the 34th floor. The video, grainy but unmistakable, showed Grayson's moment of cruel laughter when Olita mentioned Echo Bounce. "What's next? The vending machine's out of tune?" His recorded voice echoed from 1,000 shared videos, each one tagged with increasingly harsh commentary about corporate arrogance and systemic bias. By noon, investigative journalists had uncovered Olita's full story. Her prestigious background, the patent theft scandal, her daughter's death, it all spilled across the internet in a perfect storm of social justice and corporate accountability. The phone calls started immediately. Investors demanding explanations. Board members expressing concerns about leadership judgment. Competitors publicly questioning Voxtech's ability to recognize talent. But the call that changed everything came from Miranda Foster, CEO of Elevation Capital, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious minority-focused tech incubators. "Mr. Hale." Foster's voice was crisp and professional through the speakerphone. "I'm calling about Dr. Olita James. We'd like to offer her immediate funding for any acoustic technology venture she wants to pursue. $50 million in seed funding, no strings attached." "Miranda, I think there might be some misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Foster interrupted, "is how a company that claims to value innovation managed to employ one of the world's leading acoustic experts as a janitor for 3 years without noticing. We don't make those kinds of mistakes." Before Grayson could respond, his assistant knocked frantically on his door. "Sir, you need to see this. Channel 7 is here with cameras. And Dr. James is giving an interview in the lobby." Grayson rushed to his window and looked down at the building's entrance. News vans lined the street, and reporters clustered around a calm, dignified woman in a simple dress, no longer wearing her janitor's uniform. He couldn't hear her words from 40 floors up, but he could see the respectful attention of the journalists, the nodding heads, the careful note-taking. Olita James was telling her story, and the world was listening. His phone buzzed with a text from his publicist. "Client news alert, 3 more Voxtech clients just called. They want to meet with Dr. James about acoustic consulting. Independent of Voxtech. This is getting out of control." By 2 p.m., Grayson knew he had no choice. The public relations disaster was spiraling beyond damage control. But more than that, watching the security footage of his own behavior had forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth about himself. He found Olita in the building's coffee shop, calmly reading emails on her phone while reporters waited respectfully outside. "Dr. James," he said, approaching her table. "May I sit?" She looked up, her expression neutral. "It's a free country, Mr. Hale." He sat down heavily, suddenly feeling every one of his 53 years. "I came to offer you a position. Director of Spatial AI Interfaces. Your own department, unlimited budget, equity in the company." Olita set down her phone. That's generous. You're not interested, he said, reading her tone. I'm not, she confirmed. I already have a better offer. From Elevation Capital? She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd ever seen from her. Among others. Turns out there are quite a few companies interested in working with someone who can solve in 60 seconds what 20 experts couldn't figure out in 8 hours. Grayson winced. About last night, about what I said. You mean when you mocked me in front of your entire team? When you suggested I was too stupid to understand your sophisticated technology? Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. Olita leaned back in her chair. Mr. Hale, you spend 8 hours watching your engineers fail to solve a basic acoustic problem. Then, when someone with actual expertise offered help, you turned it into a comedy show. That wasn't a mistake, that was a choice. You're right, he said, the words tasting like ash. I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. She stood to leave, then paused. You know what the saddest part is? If you had listened, really listened, instead of assuming you knew everything, we could have been partners. Your technology, my expertise. We could have built something revolutionary. We still could. No, she said firmly. We couldn't. Because trust, once broken, doesn't just repair itself with a job offer and an apology. She walked toward the exit, then turned back one final time. By the way, you might want to check your client retention. 3 of your biggest accounts just called me about independent consulting contracts. As the coffee shop door closed behind her, Grayson realized that Olita James had just delivered the most elegant revenge possible. She had let his own arrogance destroy him while she rose from the ashes of her stolen career. Outside, the cameras were already rolling as she announced the launch of Echo Acoustics, her new company, funded by visionary investors who understood that brilliance comes in many forms. The woman who had been invisible for 3 years was about to become impossible to ignore.